I sat in the boardroom watching 20 years of my life get stolen in real time. The VP's daughter Madison smirked across the mahogany table as she announced they were removing my name from the $5.2 million tech contract I had built from nothing. "She's not even his real mentor," Madison declared, pointing at my protégé, Tyler. "Cut her out of the deal." The room fell silent, except for the sound of my heart breaking. But what they didn't know was that Tyler had been recording everything. 3 years earlier, I had started as a junior innovation consultant at Brightstone Technologies, fresh from Stanford, with big dreams and bigger student loans. My supervisor, Director James Brightstone, took me under his wing immediately. At 26, I thought I knew everything about technology, but James taught me that innovation meant nothing without proper strategy and legal protection. "Gene, brilliant code is worthless if you can't navigate corporate politics," James told me during our first lunch meeting at the small cafe across from our Seattle office. His weathered hands gestured as he spoke, and his eyes held the wisdom of someone who had built empires and watched them crumble. "I'm going to teach you everything my father never taught me about protecting your intellectual property." James became more than a supervisor. He became the father figure I had lost when I was 15. Every morning, he would arrive with 2 cups of coffee from the local roastery, one black for himself and one with oat milk for me. We would spend the first hour of each day discussing not just current projects, but long-term strategy, corporate law, and the art of documentation. After 18 months of learning everything from contract negotiation to intellectual property law, I developed what would become my masterpiece. The breakthrough came during a particularly frustrating week in March when I was analyzing inefficiencies in hospital record management systems for a consulting project. The existing software required administrators to input the same patient information across 7 different platforms, creating enormous waste and countless opportunities for error. Working 16-hour days in my small apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, I created a proprietary algorithm that could seamlessly integrate all hospital administrative functions into a single intuitive platform. The mathematical elegance was beautiful, but more importantly, it could reduce administrative costs by 37% while improving patient care accuracy by eliminating duplicate data entry. When I presented my preliminary findings to James, his reaction was immediate and decisive. "This is revolutionary, Jean. We're not just looking at a consulting recommendation. We're looking at intellectual property worth millions." He assigned me to lead the full project development, giving me access to a dedicated team and unlimited research budget. That's when Tyler Chen entered my professional life. Fresh from MIT with a master's degree in computer engineering, Tyler was hired as my junior analyst. He was 24, eager to learn, and genuinely appreciative of mentorship in a way that reminded me of my younger self. His technical skills were impressive, but his understanding of corporate strategy was virtually non-existent. "Tyler, writing perfect code is only 20% of success in this industry," I explained during his first week as we sat in the glass-walled conference room overlooking downtown Seattle. "The other 80% is understanding how to protect your work document, your processes, and navigate corporate relationships." Tyler absorbed everything like a sponge. He took detailed notes during our daily meetings, asked thoughtful questions about intellectual property law, and never failed to give credit where it was due. When he made suggestions for improving the algorithm's efficiency, he always framed them as building upon my foundational work, rather than attempting to claim independent innovation. Over the next 2 years, Tyler and I perfected the healthcare software through countless iterations. We conducted pilot programs with 3 major hospital networks: Seattle Children's Hospital, Virginia Mason Medical Center, and Harborview Medical Center. The results exceeded our most optimistic projections, with administrative efficiency improvements ranging from 32 to 41% across all 3 institutions. Every development session was meticulously documented. I maintained detailed logs of algorithm modifications. Tyler recorded all client feedback sessions, and together we created comprehensive technical specifications that would be invaluable for future patent applications. James insisted on this level of documentation, understanding that intellectual property protection required bulletproof evidence of creation and development timelines. The corporate recognition was immediate and significant. Senior executives began attending our quarterly progress meetings, and James started receiving inquiries from other tech companies interested in licensing deals. During our third year of development, the software had evolved into a comprehensive platform capable of serving hospital networks of any size. James began discussing succession planning during our morning coffee sessions. At 62, he was approaching retirement and had started hinting that I was being considered for his director position. "You've built something extraordinary here, Jean," he said one rainy Thursday morning as we watched traffic move slowly down First Avenue. "The company recognizes your potential, and more importantly, they understand the value of what you've created." The conversation that would change everything happened on a Friday afternoon in late October. James called me into his corner office, which overlooked both the Sound and the city skyline, and explained that Brightstone's executive team had decided to package our healthcare software as a major licensing deal to multiple hospital networks nationwide. "We're looking at potential revenue in the millions, John. This could establish you as one of the premier innovators in healthcare technology." His excitement was contagious, and I felt the validation of 3 years of exhausting work finally paying off. "I want you to start preparing comprehensive presentation materials for the board. We'll be pitching this to some of the largest hospital systems in the country." Tyler and I spent the following weeks creating detailed technical presentations, financial projections, and implementation timelines. The scope of interest was overwhelming. Hospital networks from California to New York were requesting information about licensing our platform, and preliminary discussions suggested deal values that exceeded our wildest expectations. But on a cold Saturday morning in November, everything changed forever. James suffered a massive heart attack during his weekly golf game at the country club where he had been a member for 15 years. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. He was pronounced dead at Swedish Medical Center, the same hospital where our software had achieved its highest efficiency improvements. The funeral was held the following Thursday at University Presbyterian Church, attended by hundreds of colleagues, clients, and industry leaders. As I sat in the front row listening to eulogies about James's contributions to healthcare technology, I couldn't have imagined that his death would trigger the systematic theft of everything we had built together. James's funeral became more than a celebration of his life. It transformed into an unspoken corporate battlefield, where alliances shifted and territories were claimed before his body was even laid to rest. His son David, who served as vice president of operations, immediately positioned himself as the natural heir to all of James's projects and responsibilities. David Brightstone had always existed in his father's professional shadow, lacking both the technical expertise and innovative vision that had made James a legend in the industry. At 45, David's primary contributions to Brightstone Technologies centered around cost reduction initiatives and operational efficiency rather than breakthrough innovation. His appointment to control James's portfolio represented a fundamental shift in corporate priorities. During the reception following the funeral, David approached me with a mixture of condolence and calculation. "Jean, I want you to know that all of Dad's projects will continue without interruption," he said, his grip on my shoulder feeling more possessive than comforting. "The healthcare software you've developed represents significant value for the company, and I intend to ensure its success." Meet Madison Brightstone, David's 28-year-old daughter who had recently completed her communications degree at the University of Washington. Despite having only 2 years of experience in marketing roles, Madison was appointed Director of Strategic Partnerships within a week of James's death. Her qualifications for overseeing technology licensing deals were virtually non-existent, but her last name carried considerable weight in corporate decision-making. Madison possessed the confident entitlement of someone who had never experienced professional failure. Tall and impeccably dressed, she carried herself with the assurance of inherited authority. Her blonde hair was always perfectly styled, her designer clothing projected success, and her smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at employees she considered beneath her station. The subtle changes began immediately. Madison started inserting herself into project meetings I had scheduled, arriving early to claim seats near the head of the conference table. "I hope you don't mind me sitting in," she would say with practiced politeness. "I'm trying to get up to speed so I can better support the team's objectives." Her questions revealed a fundamental lack of understanding about software development, intellectual property law, and healthcare administration. When Tyler would explain technical specifications, Madison would nod thoughtfully and take extensive notes, but her follow-up questions demonstrated that she was collecting information rather than comprehending concepts. "Can you explain again how the algorithm reduces administrative redundancy?" Madison asked during a Tuesday morning meeting, despite having received the same explanation 3 times in previous sessions. "I want to make sure I can accurately represent the technical benefits to potential clients." Corporate restructuring announcements arrived within 2 weeks of James's funeral. David proclaimed that organizational efficiency required streamlined reporting structures and clearer accountability chains. Madison would now oversee all technology licensing deals, centralizing communication and eliminating what he termed redundant management layers. Tyler received an unexpected promotion to senior analyst, but his reporting structure changed dramatically. Instead of working directly under my supervision, he would now report to Madison for all licensing-related activities. "It's really about optimizing our human resources," Madison explained during a department meeting. "Tyler has demonstrated excellent client communication skills, and this structure allows him to interface directly with potential partners." The exclusion began gradually, but accelerated quickly. Madison started scheduling private meetings with Tyler, claiming they needed to discuss strategic positioning and market analysis. When I asked Tyler about these sessions, his usual openness was replaced by uncomfortable evasion. "They're just strategy sessions, really," Tyler said, avoiding eye contact as we stood by the coffee machine that had become our informal meeting space. "Madison wants to understand the technical aspects so she can better represent our work to clients." His voice carried a tension I had never heard before, and his body language suggested he was withholding significant information. Suddenly, I found myself excluded from client presentations I had personally scheduled and prepared. Madison would arrive at my desk with apologetic explanations about streamlining communication and ensuring consistent messaging to potential partners. "We've decided that Tyler should handle the technical presentations since he's so well prepared," she said with manufactured concern. "This way, you can focus on the development work that you do so brilliantly." The exclusions weren't limited to client meetings. Internal strategy sessions, budget discussions, and timeline planning meetings began happening without my knowledge or participation. When I inquired about these omissions, Madison would express surprise and promise to make sure you're included going forward. But the invitations never materialized. While organizing James's personal office items for his family, I discovered a memo he had written 3 weeks before his death. Hidden in a manila folder labeled Succession Planning, the document explicitly stated that I should retain primary ownership of the healthcare software intellectual property, with specific recommendations for patent applications and licensing structures. "Jean Williams has demonstrated exceptional innovation and leadership in developing our healthcare administration platform," the memo read. "Her contributions represent the foundation of what could become our most valuable intellectual property asset. I recommend that she be granted primary ownership status with appropriate equity compensation, reflecting her innovative contributions. The memo was dated and signed with copies designated for the legal department and executive leadership. Its existence proved that James had recognized my rightful ownership and had taken steps to protect my interests before his unexpected death. Armed with this documentation, I requested a meeting with David to discuss the succession planning memo and my role in the healthcare software licensing deals. David received me in his newly redecorated office, which had been stripped of James's warm personal touches and replaced with cold corporate efficiency. "John, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention," David said without looking up from his computer screen. "However, Madison has been conducting a comprehensive review of all Dad's decisions to ensure we're making optimal use of our resources." He finally made eye contact, and his expression conveyed neither warmth nor respect. "She's identified several areas where Dad's judgment may have been influenced by personal relationships rather than business objectives." David's words hit like a physical blow. "I think you should be grateful that you still have a position here, considering the corporate restructuring we're implementing," he continued with casual cruelty. "Madison believes your skills are better suited to supporting research rather than leading strategic initiatives." The meeting lasted less than 10 minutes, but its message was crystal clear. The memo that should have protected my interests was being dismissed as an old man's sentimentality, and my future at Brightstone Technologies would be determined by someone with no understanding of what I had created. Over the following 6 months, my professional identity was methodically dismantled piece by piece. Madison orchestrated my marginalization with the precision of a corporate surgeon, each cut designed to diminish my role while avoiding actions dramatic enough to trigger legal concerns. My daily responsibilities shifted from strategic leadership to what Madison euphemistically termed supporting research. Instead of leading client presentations and development planning, I found myself relegated to background analysis and data compilation. Tyler, meanwhile, assumed increasing responsibility for all client interactions and technical demonstrations. "We're implementing a more efficient division of labor," Madison explained during a departmental meeting held in the sterile conference room that had once been a collaborative space. "Gene's analytical strengths are invaluable for the research foundation, while Tyler's communication skills make him ideal for client engagement." The rebranding announcement came during a company-wide meeting in March. Madison stood confidently at the front of the auditorium, presenting slides that renamed my healthcare software BrightCare Solutions, with Tyler listed as the primary developer and herself designated as the executive architect. My name appeared nowhere in the presentation materials. BrightCare Solutions represents the innovative collaboration between our development team and strategic leadership, Madison announced to the assembled employees. "Tyler Chen has demonstrated exceptional technical leadership in creating this revolutionary platform, while I've provided the strategic vision necessary for market positioning." Watching my life's work being claimed by others felt like witnessing my own professional murder. Tyler sat in the front row, occasionally glancing back at me with expressions I couldn't interpret. Was it guilt, apology, complicity? His face revealed nothing definitive, leaving me to question everything I thought I knew about our working relationship. Corporate legal, led by senior counsel Patricia Hoffman, began conducting comprehensive reviews of all project documentation. Patricia was a meticulous attorney in her early 40s who had joined Brightstone 5 years earlier after practicing intellectual property law at a prestigious downtown firm. She scheduled individual meetings with all team members to clarify ownership structures for the upcoming licensing deals. "These reviews are standard procedure for high-value intellectual property assets," Patricia explained during my session in her office, which was lined with law books and industry journals. "We need to ensure that all documentation accurately reflects development contributions and ownership rights." Patricia's questions were thorough and precise, focusing on development timelines, collaborative processes, and the origination of key innovations. Her legal training was evident in how she structured inquiries to elicit specific information about my role in creating the core algorithms and managing the overall project development. Tyler's transformation became increasingly apparent during this period. He stopped consulting me on technical decisions and began deferring to Madison's suggestions, even when her recommendations demonstrated fundamental misunderstandings of software architecture. Our daily collaborative sessions disappeared, replaced by formal progress reports delivered via email. "I think we should implement Madison's suggestion for modifying the user interface," Tyler announced during one of our few remaining technical meetings. His statement was particularly jarring because Madison's suggestion would have reduced system efficiency by approximately 15% while providing no meaningful benefits to end users. My access to critical project files was systematically restricted through what Madison described as information security protocols. Password protections appeared on directories I had created, and my administrative privileges were reduced to basic user status. When I protested these limitations, Madison expressed concern about unauthorized modifications to important project materials. "We're simply implementing best practices for intellectual property protection," Madison explained with manufactured sympathy. "Since you're no longer the primary developer, it's important that all modifications go through proper approval channels." The financial pressure intensified when I discovered that my salary had been frozen at current levels, while Tyler received a significant raise that elevated his compensation above mine despite his junior status. Madison's promotion came with a corner office featuring floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, while I remained in my small interior workspace. During this period of systematic marginalization, I began documenting everything with the same meticulous attention to detail that James had taught me. I saved every email exchange, recorded conversations when legally permissible, and maintained detailed logs of all interactions with Madison and Tyler. Something about Patricia's uncomfortable expressions during the legal reviews suggested that not everyone was comfortable with the changes occurring. 3 major hospital networks expressed serious interest in licensing the software for a combined value of $5.2 million. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Houston, Methodist and Kaiser Permanente, Northern California, were preparing to submit formal proposals for comprehensive platform implementation across their entire systems. Madison and Tyler handled all negotiations without my participation, despite my intimate knowledge of the software's capabilities and limitations. I learned about meeting outcomes through company-wide emails and overheard conversations feeling like a stranger observing my own professional legacy being bartered away. "The client response has been overwhelmingly positive," Madison announced during a staff meeting where she detailed the progress of licensing negotiations. "Tyler's technical presentations have been particularly effective in demonstrating the platform's value proposition." The psychological toll was devastating. I found myself questioning every professional decision I had made, wondering if James's faith in my abilities had been misplaced. Sleep became elusive as I replayed conversations and analyzed every interaction for signs I had missed. The confidence that had carried me through Stanford and 3 years of innovation was eroding under the constant message that my contributions were expendable. But something kept me fighting. Perhaps it was James's memory, or maybe it was the fundamental injustice of watching my intellectual property being stolen in broad daylight. I continued documenting everything, creating a comprehensive record of the systematic theft of my life's work. Madison scheduled a company-wide meeting for the first Wednesday in June to announce what she termed exciting developments regarding the BrightCare Solutions licensing deals. The invitation specifically mentioned that I was welcome to attend as a valued team member who contributed to the research phase. The phrase research phase was the final insult reducing 3 years of innovative development to preliminary background work. As I prepared for what I assumed would be my professional execution, I had no idea that Tyler had been playing a completely different game. The Brightstone Technologies boardroom had never felt more imposing than it did that Wednesday morning in June. 23 people filled the polished conference table and surrounding chairs representing every department head, senior executive, and key stakeholder in the company. The room's floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of Puget Sound, but the atmosphere inside felt suffocating. Madison had orchestrated the meeting like a carefully staged performance. She stood at the head of the table wearing a navy blue power suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, her presentation materials arranged with military precision. Tyler sat to her right, dressed in the new wardrobe that his recent raise had apparently funded. Thank you all for gathering today to celebrate what represents the most significant licensing opportunity in Brightstone's history. Madison began with the polished confidence of someone who had never faced genuine adversity. The BrightCare Solutions platform has attracted unprecedented interest from major healthcare networks across the country. Her presentation unfolded like a masterclass in intellectual property theft. Slide after slide detailed the innovative collaboration between herself and Tyler, describing how their partnership had revolutionized healthcare administration software through breakthrough algorithmic development. My name appeared nowhere in the 52-slide presentation. Madison described the software's capabilities with buzzwords and marketing language that revealed her superficial understanding of its actual functionality. Our platform leverages synergistic integration protocols to optimize administrative workflow efficiency, she proclaimed, using terminology that sounded impressive to non-technical audiences while meaning absolutely nothing to anyone who understood software development. Tyler's portion of his presentation was far more troubling because his technical knowledge was genuine. He presented system architecture diagrams I had created, explaining algorithmic functions I had taught him during countless hours of patient mentorship. His confidence in discussing integration protocols and efficiency algorithms was perfect because I had trained him so thoroughly. The core mathematical model reduces redundant data entry by creating unified pathways between previously isolated administrative functions, Tyler explained while displaying flowcharts I had drawn on his whiteboard during late-night development sessions. This integration allows hospital administrators to complete tasks that previously required 7 separate system interactions using a single intuitive interface. Board members asked detailed technical questions, and Tyler answered with knowledge I had spent 3 years accumulating and sharing with him. His responses were accurate, thorough, and delivered with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely understood the technology's revolutionary potential. When board member Sarah Jenkins, who oversaw corporate strategy, asked about the project's origins, Madison's response was swift and dismissive. The initial research phase involved various team members exploring different approaches to healthcare software challenges, she said with practiced nonchalance. However, the actual breakthrough innovations came from the collaborative work Tyler and I developed over the past 18 months. Sarah's follow-up question cut deeper. What about the preliminary development work that preceded your collaboration? Who was responsible for the foundational research? Gene Williams conducted preliminary research that helped inspire our actual breakthrough, Madison replied, gesturing toward me with what appeared to be casual acknowledgement. Her analytical work provided valuable background information, but the meaningful innovations were developed independently through our strategic partnership. The casual dismissal of 3 years of my life as preliminary research and background information felt like being erased from my own professional existence. Every algorithm, every integration protocol, every efficiency improvement that Tyler was confidently explaining to the board had originated from my mind and my work. David began reading the licensing agreement aloud, his voice carrying the authority of someone announcing historical significance. The contract terms were stunning in their scope, $5.2 million from 3 major hospital networks, with Tyler listed as the primary intellectual property holder and Madison designated as the executive architect. My name appeared only in a brief acknowledgement section described as a research contributor whose analytical work supported the preliminary development phase. 3 years of innovation mentorship and strategic leadership had been reduced to a footnote in my own professional legacy. The injustice reached a breaking point that I could no longer tolerate silently. I stood up my chair, scraping against the polished floor with a sound that cut through the celebratory atmosphere like a blade. "I need to object to these contract terms," I said, my voice carrying more authority than I felt. "I created the core algorithm and managed this project for 3 years." The room fell into complete silence. 23 pairs of eyes focused on me with expressions ranging from surprise to irritation to curiosity. Madison's confident smile faltered for just a moment before returning with increased intensity. "Jean, I appreciate your passion for the project," Madison responded with condescending sympathy, "but I think you're overstating your individual contributions to what has always been a collaborative effort." "I'm not overstating anything," I replied, feeling 3 years of suppressed frustration finally finding voice. "I developed the mathematical models, I created the integration protocols, and I managed every aspect of this project from its inception." Madison's expression shifted from sympathy to something much colder. "I understand that it can be difficult to watch projects evolve beyond your initial involvement," she said with calculated cruelty. "But the reality is that meaningful innovation occurred after your preliminary research phase concluded. Then came the devastating line that would echo in my memory forever." Madison smirked with open contempt and delivered her killing blow. "She's not even his real mentor. Cut her out of the deal." The words hit like a physical assault. 3 years of patient teaching, countless hours of guidance, the pride I had taken in Tyler's professional development, all dismissed as meaningless pretense. Madison's statement suggested that my mentorship had been fake, that my relationship with Tyler had been professionally empty, that everything I thought I had built was an illusion. I looked directly at Tyler, desperate for some sign of support or acknowledgement of our professional relationship. He could have corrected Madison's character assassination with a single sentence. He could have acknowledged my role in his technical education. He could have demonstrated the integrity I thought I had helped instill in him. Instead, Tyler remained silent, staring down at his hands as if the polished conference table held answers to questions he couldn't face. His silence was more devastating than Madison's attack because it confirmed that my trust had been completely misplaced. David called for a formal vote to finalize the contract terms, and the result was as inevitable as it was humiliating. Every hand in the room rose except mine. Even Patricia from legal voted to approve terms she had seemed uncomfortable discussing in our previous meetings. As celebration erupted around the table, I felt completely isolated in a room full of colleagues who had just witnessed the theft of my intellectual property and chosen to validate it through their silence. Madison accepted congratulations with gracious humility. Tyler shook hands with board members who praised his technical expertise, and I stood alone beside my chair like a defendant who had just been convicted. The meeting was ending when Tyler quietly approached me as others filed out of the boardroom. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes seemed to carry a message I couldn't interpret. "Just let them talk," he whispered so quietly that I almost missed the words. His statement made no sense in the context of what had just occurred. The talking was finished. The vote was complete. The contract was approved. My professional execution had been carried out with corporate efficiency and legal precision. But something in Tyler's eyes suggested there was more to this story than what I had witnessed in the boardroom. After the boardroom humiliation, I retreated to my small office, feeling like a condemned prisoner awaiting execution. My personal belongings seemed to mock me from their places around the workspace, the Stanford diploma that had promised professional success photographs, from project milestones that now belonged to someone else, and the coffee mug James had given me with "Innovation requires courage," printed in simple black letters. I began methodically packing my possessions into cardboard boxes, preparing to resign from a position where my contributions had been systematically erased and my professional identity completely invalidated. The weight of failure pressed down like a physical force, making every movement feel labored and purposeless. Tyler appeared in my doorway 20 minutes after the boardroom meeting concluded. He looked around nervously before stepping inside and closing the door with deliberate care. His behavior seemed strange, given that we were no longer supposed to have any meaningful professional relationship. "Jean, we need to talk," Tyler said with an urgency that contradicted his earlier silence. "But not here. Can you meet me at the coffee shop across the street in 30 minutes? His request confused me, but curiosity overcame my devastation. 30 minutes later, I sat across from Tyler in the small cafe where James and I had shared countless morning conversations. The location felt appropriate for what I assumed would be Tyler's apology for his cowardice in the boardroom. Tyler placed his smartphone on the table between us and pressed the record function. "I need you to hear something before you make any decisions about your future here," he said, his voice carrying an intensity I had never heard before. The recording began with Madison's voice captured during what sounded like a private meeting. "Tyler, you understand that Jean's contributions were valuable for getting us started, but she lacks the strategic vision necessary for major licensing deals. This is your opportunity to establish yourself as the primary technical authority." Tyler's recorded response was carefully diplomatic. "I appreciate the opportunity, Madison. I want to make sure we're properly acknowledging everyone's contributions throughout the development process." Madison's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Tyler, this is business, not a social club. Jean did some preliminary analytical work, but the real innovations came from our collaboration. You developed the meaningful technical advances under my strategic guidance." The conversation continued for 18 minutes, revealing Madison's complete ignorance of software development. Combined with her absolute confidence in claiming credit for innovations she couldn't even properly describe. More damaging, the recording captured her explicit admission that she knew I had created the core algorithms, but intended to claim ownership anyway. "I understand that Jean thinks she invented everything," Madison's voice continued, "but technical competence isn't the same as business leadership. She lacks the vision to maximize this platform's commercial potential." Tyler stopped the recording and looked at me with expressions I had never seen on his face. "Jean, I've been working undercover for the past 3 months at your instruction." My confusion must have been apparent because Tyler immediately clarified. "Do you remember our conversation in February when Madison started inserting herself into project meetings? You told me to appear cooperative while documenting everything that seemed problematic." The memory crashed back with sudden clarity. During a particularly frustrating week when Madison had begun excluding me from client discussions, I had indeed suggested that Tyler should comply with her directives while keeping me informed about any concerning developments. "I told you to gather information, Tyler, not to completely abandon our professional relationship," I said, still struggling to understand the scope of his deception. Tyler's expression became more serious. "Patricia from legal approached me 6 weeks ago with concerns about the intellectual property transfers. She suspected fraud, but needed concrete evidence before she could act. We've been building a case, but we needed Madison to incriminate herself completely." He showed me his phone's storage, which contained dozens of recorded conversations with Madison, where she admitted her lack of technical knowledge, while simultaneously claiming credit for innovations she couldn't explain. More significantly, Tyler had saved every email exchange between us over 3 years, creating a comprehensive timeline of my technical instruction and mentorship. "Look at this," Tyler said, scrolling through hundreds of messages. "Every algorithm you taught me, every efficiency improvement you suggested, every strategic decision you guided me through. It's all documented with dates and details. The evidence was overwhelming and meticulously organized. Tyler had saved technical specifications. I had created screenshots of development sessions I had led and detailed notes from mentorship conversations where I had explained complex mathematical concepts. The documentation clearly established my role as the primary innovator and his position as my student. But the most significant revelation was yet to come. Tyler pulled up a legal document on his phone showing patent applications I had filed 18 months earlier for the core healthcare administration algorithms. I had completely forgotten about these preliminary applications, but they were still pending and clearly established my intellectual property ownership. Patricia discovered these during her investigation, Tyler explained. You filed them through the company's legal department, but Madison never knew they existed because she wasn't involved in the project at that time. The patent applications contained detailed technical descriptions of the mathematical models that formed the foundation of the healthcare software. Every innovation that Tyler had presented in the boardroom was protected by intellectual property law that predated Madison's involvement by more than a year. Tyler revealed that Madison and David had orchestrated this intellectual property theft from the moment James died. Their plan involved stealing the healthcare software using the licensing proceeds to fund David's campaign for a board position at a larger technology company and establishing Madison as a rising star in corporate leadership. They never expected anyone to challenge their narrative, Tyler continued. Madison assumed that her position and family name would be sufficient to legitimize the theft, while David believed that James's death eliminated any institutional memory of your contributions. Patricia entered the cafe at that moment, carrying a leather briefcase that suggested serious legal business. She sat down with the confident bearing of an attorney who had built an airtight case and was prepared to deploy it strategically. Jean, I owe you an apology for my silence during today's meeting, Patricia began. But Tyler and I have been conducting a comprehensive investigation into intellectual property fraud, and we needed Madison to complete her criminal activity before we could intervene. Patricia opened her briefcase and removed a thick folder containing legal documents, recorded conversations, and technical evidence that would transform tomorrow's contract signing ceremony into something Madison never anticipated. The contract as written is completely invalid because it fraudulently assigns intellectual property rights that belong to you, Patricia explained, with the precision of someone who had spent weeks building an unassailable legal argument. More importantly, Madison has committed multiple felonies by knowingly filing false documentation with intent to defraud. Tyler then revealed the final element of their strategy. The 3 hospital networks had been discreetly informed about the intellectual property dispute and were sending their own legal teams to investigate before finalizing the $5.2 million licensing agreement. Tomorrow's contract signing ceremony is actually a trap, Tyler said with satisfaction I had never seen in his expression. Madison thinks she's about to claim victory, but she's actually walking into a legal ambush that will expose her fraud in front of everyone who witnessed today's humiliation. For the first time since James's death, I felt something resembling hope. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of crystalline clarity that makes Seattle's natural beauty overwhelming. I entered Brightstone Technologies' largest conference room 30 minutes before the scheduled contract signing ceremony, taking a seat near the back, where I could observe without drawing attention to myself. The room filled gradually with an impressive array of legal and corporate power. Representatives from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia Houston Methodist and Kaiser Permanente Northern California arrived with their own legal teams, transforming what Madison had envisioned as a celebration into something resembling a high-stakes negotiation. Madison entered wearing a cream-colored designer suit that probably cost more than most employees earned in a week. Her confidence was absolute, as she greeted hospital executives with practiced charm and positioned herself at the head of the conference table, like a CEO addressing her board of directors. Tyler arrived precisely on time carrying a leather portfolio that I now knew contained evidence that would destroy Madison's carefully constructed fraud. His demeanor was professional, but subdued, giving no indication of the legal earthquake he was prepared to trigger. David opened the ceremony with a congratulatory speech that positioned Madison and Tyler as innovative partners who had revolutionized healthcare administration through their collaborative genius. Today represents the largest licensing deal in Brightstone's 40-year history, David proclaimed with paternal pride. Madison and Tyler have created something truly extraordinary. As photographers documented what David assumed would be a historic moment for the company, Madison began presenting the software platform with the polished confidence of someone who genuinely believed she had earned her position through merit rather than inheritance and theft. The first sign of trouble came when Rachel Martinez, the lead attorney for Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, requested a comprehensive review of the intellectual property documentation before signing. This was standard legal procedure, but Madison's expression revealed nervous anticipation rather than confident cooperation. "Of course," Madison replied with manufactured enthusiasm. "We have complete documentation for all development phases and ownership structures." Rachel opened her own legal folder and began asking specific technical questions about algorithm development timelines. "Can you explain the mathematical progression from preliminary concept to final implementation?" she inquired, with the precision of an attorney who had spent considerable time understanding technical details. Madison's response revealed the fundamental weakness in her fraud. Our development process leveraged iterative optimization protocols to enhance algorithmic efficiency through collaborative innovation frameworks. Her answer contained no actual technical information, relying instead on corporate buzzwords that sounded impressive to non-technical audiences. Rachel's follow-up questions became increasingly specific, focusing on documentation dates, patent applications, and the timeline of key innovations. Tyler answered these inquiries with complete honesty, inadvertently contradicting several of Madison's previous statements about development chronology and her own contributions. "According to our preliminary research," Rachel announced while consulting her notes, "patent applications for the core algorithms were filed 18 months ago by Gene Williams, who doesn't appear to be listed as an intellectual property holder in this contract." The room's atmosphere shifted dramatically. Hospital executives exchanged concerned glances, while their legal teams began reviewing contract documentation with obvious alarm. Madison's confident demeanor wavered as she struggled to explain why the primary patent holder wasn't included in ownership structures. Patricia chose this moment to stand up and deliver the devastating blow that would expose Madison's fraud completely. "I need to interrupt these proceedings," Patricia announced with the authority of someone who had built an unassailable legal case. "Brightstone's legal department has identified significant intellectual property concerns that require immediate investigation before any contracts can be executed." Patricia's briefcase contained evidence that would destroy Madison's career and potentially send her to federal prison. She began presenting Tyler's recorded conversations, my original patent filings, and comprehensive email documentation that proved I had created every innovation Madison claimed as her own. "These recordings demonstrate that Madison Brightstone knowingly misrepresented intellectual property ownership with intent to defraud," Patricia announced while playing audio of Madison, admitting she knew I had invented the algorithms. She explicitly acknowledged Gene Williams's contributions while simultaneously planning to exclude her from all licensing agreements. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. Madison's own voice confirmed her knowledge of my intellectual property rights, her intention to steal credit for innovations she couldn't explain, and her complete lack of technical understanding regarding the software she claimed to have co-developed. Madison attempted to maintain her composure while the foundation of her fraud crumbled publicly. "There seems to be some confusion about collaborative development processes," she said with desperation masquerading as confidence. "Tyler and I built upon preliminary research to create meaningful innovations." But her explanations became increasingly contradictory as Patricia presented evidence that established my role as the sole creator of every significant technical advancement. Email exchanges showing my detailed instruction of Tyler patent applications filed before Madison's involvement, and recorded conversations proving her intentional fraud created an unassailable legal argument. Tyler's role in exposing the conspiracy became apparent as he confirmed the authenticity of every piece of evidence Patricia presented. His courage in recording Madison's incriminating statements and preserving comprehensive documentation of my contributions had made this moment of justice possible. David realized that the $5.2 million licensing deal was collapsing in real time and attempted damage control through desperate deflection. "I think there may be some internal miscommunications that can be resolved through proper review processes," he said while loosening his tie with obvious stress. "Perhaps we should postpone today's signing until documentation issues are fully clarified." But the damage was irreversible. All three hospital networks representatives announced that they could not proceed with licensing agreements involving disputed intellectual property, regardless of the software's technical merits. Rachel Martinez spoke for all three organizations. "We cannot enter into contracts where ownership rights are contested or unclear." Within 15 minutes, executives from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia Houston Methodist and Kaiser Permanente Northern California had packed their materials and departed, taking the $5.2 million opportunity with them. Patricia's final announcement transformed Madison's professional humiliation into potential criminal liability. "Based on the evidence we've compiled, I'm recommending that Brightstone's board conduct a comprehensive investigation into intellectual property fraud. This investigation may result in criminal referrals to federal authorities." Madison's designer suit and confident demeanor couldn't protect her from the legal consequences of felony intellectual property theft. As the conference room emptied, she sat alone at the head of the table, where she had expected to claim victory, instead facing the destruction of her career and possible imprisonment. 2 weeks after the boardroom confrontation that exposed Madison's fraud, Brightstone Technologies' board of directors concluded their investigation with results that exceeded my most optimistic expectations for justice. The evidence Patricia and Tyler had compiled was so comprehensive and damning that the corporate response was swift and decisive. Madison Brightstone was terminated immediately for gross misconduct, intellectual property theft, and fraud. The board's investigation revealed that her crimes extended beyond my healthcare software to include attempts to claim credit for innovations developed by junior employees in 3 other departments. She faced potential federal charges for wire fraud, intellectual property theft, and conspiracy to defraud business partners. David Brightstone's forced resignation came with additional consequences that reflected the board's recognition of his complicity in the conspiracy. He forfeited all stock options, was prohibited from future employment with any Brightstone subsidiary, and lost his pension benefits due to the misconduct clause in his executive contract. The company's legal department initiated civil litigation to recover damages related to the fraudulent licensing attempt. The board's formal recognition of my intellectual property rights came with an apology that acknowledged the injustice I had suffered and the company's failure to protect my innovations. Board Chair Elizabeth Morrison personally delivered their resolution. Gene Williams is hereby recognized as the sole creator and owner of the Healthcare Administration software platform with all associated intellectual property rights and commercial benefits. My appointment to James's former position as Director of Innovation represented more than professional advancement. It symbolized the validation of everything he had taught me about protecting intellectual property and maintaining integrity under pressure. The promotion came with a 60% salary increase, significant equity compensation, and the authority to rebuild the innovation department according to my own vision. Tyler's public acknowledgement of his undercover role and formal apology for the apparent betrayal earned him widespread respect throughout the company. His courage in exposing Madison's fraud despite the professional risks involved demonstrated the integrity I had hoped to instill during our mentorship. The board promoted him to project manager and assigned him to work directly under my supervision. Patricia Hoffman's promotion to general counsel reflected the board's appreciation for her integrity in exposing corporate fraud despite potential retaliation from senior management. Her willingness to risk her career to ensure justice became legendary within the company and established her as one of my most trusted allies and friends. With clear intellectual property ownership established and Madison's fraud exposed, I was able to renegotiate licensing agreements directly with the hospital networks that had withdrawn from the original deal. The restructured contracts were valued at $6.8 million, with significantly better terms that reflected the software's true value and my ownership rights. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, Houston, Methodist and Kaiser Permanente, Northern California all expressed enthusiasm for working directly with the software's actual creator rather than corporate intermediaries who lacked technical understanding. Rachel Martinez personally apologized for the confusion and commended my persistence in protecting my intellectual property rights. The scandal triggered comprehensive reforms in Brightstone's intellectual property policies, ensuring that future innovations would be properly protected and attributed to their actual creators. New documentation requirements, mandatory training programs, and whistleblower protections were implemented to prevent similar fraud attempts. 6 months after Madison's termination, BrightCare Solutions launched successfully across all 3 initial hospital networks with implementation results that exceeded our projected efficiency improvements. Patient care quality increased measurably due to reduced administrative errors, while hospital administrators reported unprecedented satisfaction with the platform's intuitive functionality. The software's success attracted attention from healthcare systems nationwide, leading to licensing inquiries from major networks in California, Texas, New York, and Florida. Our client base expanded to 15 hospital networks within the first year, generating revenue that transformed Brightstone Technologies into a leader in healthcare administration software. Tyler evolved into an exceptional project manager whose technical skills were matched by his commitment to ethical leadership. Our working relationship rebuilt itself on a foundation of mutual respect, honest communication, and shared commitment to innovation. He became my most trusted collaborator in developing advanced features and managing client relationships. My corner office overlooking Elliott Bay became a symbol of professional resurrection and the power of persistence in the face of systematic injustice. The View reminded me daily of James's lessons about protecting intellectual property and maintaining integrity, regardless of corporate pressure or personal cost. The broader impact of our success extended beyond financial metrics to meaningful improvements in healthcare administration across hundreds of thousands of patient interactions. Hospital administrators regularly sent testimonials about time savings, error reductions, and improved patient satisfaction directly attributable to our software platform. Madison's legal consequences served as a deterrent to other potential corporate thieves, while providing personal satisfaction that justice had been served. Federal prosecutors filed charges for wire fraud and intellectual property theft, leading to her conviction and a 2-year federal prison sentence. David's consulting business failed within 6 months due to his damaged reputation. The life lesson that emerged from this experience was profound. Protecting your intellectual property and maintaining detailed documentation aren't just professional best practices, they're essential survival tools in corporate environments where innovation can be stolen through systematic manipulation and family privilege. James's greatest gift hadn't been just technical knowledge or strategic thinking. It had been teaching me to trust my own judgment while building unassailable evidence for my contributions. His insistence on comprehensive documentation had literally saved my career and ensured that justice ultimately prevailed over corporate theft. Tyler's courage in exposing fraud, despite significant personal and professional risks, demonstrated that integrity could triumph over expedience when guided by proper mentorship and moral clarity. His willingness to risk his career for justice validated everything I had tried to teach him about professional ethics. 1 year after the boardroom confrontation that had seemed like professional execution, I stood in my director's office preparing to mentor 3 new junior developers who would help expand our healthcare platform into new markets. The irony wasn't lost on me. The theft attempt had ultimately led to greater success than I could have achieved without the publicity and validation that came from exposing corporate fraud. Tyler knocked on my door that anniversary morning carrying 2 cups of coffee from the local roastery, continuing the tradition James had established years earlier. "Ready to change some more lives today?" he asked with the enthusiasm of someone who had learned that true professional satisfaction comes from meaningful innovation rather than stolen credit. Looking out at Elliott Bay, I thought about James and realized his greatest lesson hadn't been about intellectual property law or corporate strategy. He had taught me that protecting your work and trusting the right people creates the foundation for building something far greater than what anyone can steal. Madison spent her days in federal prison, while I spent mine revolutionizing healthcare administration for millions of patients. David worked as a low-level consultant, while I led a team of brilliant innovators creating solutions that improved lives across the country. The contrast couldn't have been more satisfying. Justice hadn't just been served. It had created the platform for building something extraordinary that honored both my own innovations and James's faith in my potential. Have you ever had your hard work stolen by someone in a position of power? How did you fight back? Or what do you wish you had done differently? Share your experience in the comments below, and remember to like this video if my story resonated with you. Please subscribe for more stories about standing up to workplace injustice and protecting what you've built through your own talent and dedication. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that justice can prevail when you document everything and trust the right people. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it inspires you to never give up on protecting what's rightfully yours.